In 1955, a young woman who had just returned from a first date faced a specific, unspoken calculation. She could not call him, not that evening, not the following morning, and arguably not at all, not first, not ever. If the phone was going to ring, it had to be his hand picking it up on the other end. A woman who called first was considered forward, desperate, even. And in the carefully maintained social world of 1950s courtship, that reputation, once established, was remarkably difficult to undo. Dating in this era wasn't simply about attraction or compatibility. It was a carefully choreographed set of expectations, and breaking even one unwritten rule could quietly end things before they had properly begun. Today, the 10 rules that govern dating and courtship for women in the 1950s. Item number 1. The man always initiated. The rule was simple, absolute, and almost universally understood. A woman did not call a man first. She did not suggest a date, did not propose a meeting place, and did not follow up after an evening out to express her interest. All of that was considered the man's exclusive territory. If he was interested, he would call. If he didn't call, the answer was understood without a word being exchanged. Etiquette guides of the era advised women to make themselves available and pleasant, but never to appear eager or to take any action that might be read as pursuing. The entire opening chapter of Courtship was, by design, written entirely by one party, and it was never the woman. Item number 2. Chaperones, unpublic settings. For younger couples especially, the early stages of courtship were rarely unsupervised. Many families expected a chaperone to be present for initial dates, particularly in more conservative communities, whether that meant an older sibling, a family friend, or simply the understood requirement that any outing take place in a fully public setting where behavior could be observed and later reported. Even without a formal chaperone, the social geography of a 1950s date was carefully designed around visibility. A movie theater, a soda fountain, a church social, these weren't simply convenient venues. They were settings where a couple could be seen behaving appropriately, and where any deviation from expected conduct would not go unnoticed. Item number 3. Physical affection followed a strict timeline. The progression of physical affection in 1950s courtship was socially policed with a precision that would seem almost formal today. A first date might permit nothing beyond a handshake or a brief goodnight at the door. A second or third date might allow a goodnight kiss, though even that was considered meaningful enough to be discussed among friends. Anything beyond that was understood to belong to a much later, more serious stage of the relationship, and a woman who moved through these stages to quickly risked being labeled in ways that followed her social reputation for years. The timeline wasn't written down anywhere officially, but it was understood by nearly everyone, enforced not by law, but by the quiet, constant surveillance of community opinion. Item number 4. He always paid. The financial structure of a 1950s date was as rigidly understood as anything else in the courtship ritual. The man paid for everything, always, without discussion. A woman reaching for her purse at the end of a dinner could be read not as a generous gesture, but as an implied criticism of a man's ability to provide, a suggestion that she didn't trust him to handle it, or worse, that she didn't consider the evening a real date at all. Some etiquette guides of the era went further, advising women even to look at the check when it arrived, so as to avoid any appearance of calculating the cost or suggesting involvement in the transaction. The man's financial role wasn't simply tradition. It was considered an essential demonstration of his suitability as a future provider. Item number 5. Curfews enforced by parents. A 1950s date did not end when the conversation wound down. It ended when the clock struck a strictly enforced time. For young women, parental curfews were non-negotiable, and returning even 15 minutes late could result in being grounded for weeks. To signal that time was running out, parents often used silent, community-understood cues like turning on the porch light as an unambiguous warning to the young man standing at the front door. Returning a daughter late was seen as a direct reflection on a man's respectability and character. For the woman, Breaking curfew wasn't just a minor dispute with her parents, it invited immediate gossip from neighbors watching from their front windows, suggesting the evening had gone further than society permitted. Item number 6. Going steady had formal, almost contractual rules. Moving from casual dating to an exclusive relationship wasn't a vague, unspoken agreement, it was a public declaration. Young is going steady. This transition carried formal, visible markers that signaled exclusivity to the entire community. A young man would give his date, his high school class ring often wrapped in tape or sweater yarn, so it wouldn't slip off her smaller finger or hand over his varsity letter sweater or jacket. Once a woman wore these items, she was officially off the market. Going steady meant neither party could accept dates from anyone else, and breaking off the arrangement required a formal, often dramatic return of the items before either person could begin dating again. Item number 7. A woman's reputation was fragile and closely watched. In the 1950s, a young man who dated multiple women in a short period was often viewed as popular or successful. A young woman who did the same even completely innocently risked severe social penalty. The term fast was applied with minimal evidence, and once attached to a woman's name, it proved nearly impossible to erase. Neighbors, classmates, church members, and local business owners kept casual tally of who was seen with whom and at what hours. Etiquette books routinely warned young women that their social standing was their most valuable asset, and that even the appearance of impropriety could cause respectable suitors and their families to quietly pull away. Item number 8. Engagement timelines were expected to move quickly. Once a relationship reached a certain duration, often as little as 6 months to a year, the pressure to transition from dating to an official engagement became immense. Prolonged courtship without a proposal on the horizon raised immediate, uncomfortable questions from family and friends. If a man didn't ask, the assumption was often made that something was wrong with the woman, that she was somehow unsuited for marriage or unable to hold a man's interest. Dating 4 years without an intent to marry was seen as a waste of a young woman's peak youth, and women were actively encouraged by mothers and advice columnists alike to cut ties if a proposal wasn't offered within a socially acceptable time frame. Item number 9. Interracial and interfaith restrictions. While social etiquette governed the mechanics of dating, law and rigid community prejudice drew its boundaries. In the 1950s, cross-cultural, interfaith, and particularly interracial dating faced intense social hostility and severe legal enforcement. Anti-miscegenation laws remained active on the books across over 24 states throughout the decade, making relationships between black and white individuals not merely taboo, but illegal. Even where legal prohibitions did not exist, religious and social pressures inside communities held firm line. Dating outside one's immediate faith or ethnic background frequently resulted in family disownment, social exile, or job loss. It was not until the landmark Supreme Court ruling in Loving v. Virginia in 1967 that state bans on interracial marriage were declared unconstitutional, striking down the legal walls that had dictated courtship choices for generations. Item number 10. Success was measured by the altar, not happiness. Perhaps the heaviest rule of 1950s courtship was its ultimate purpose. Dating was never viewed as a harmless pastime, a journey of self-discovery, or a search for emotional fulfillment. It was an apprenticeship for marriage. Popular culture, women's magazines, and school home economics classes framed a woman's ultimate social validation around securing a husband before her early 20s. Remaining unmarried past 25 invited pitying whispers and the dreaded label of spinsters, because the culture treated marriage as the only acceptable adult destination for a woman. The entire courtship system, the waiting, the curfews, the careful reputation management was designed not to help her find compatibility, but to bring her successfully to the altar. The changing tide. By the mid-1960s and into the 1970s, this rigid script began to fray. The FDA's approval of the birth control pill, 1960, gave women unprecedented control over their own lives and bodies, fundamentally altering the high-stakes calculations that had governed physical affection for generations. At the same time, second-wave feminism began challenging the cultural assumption that a woman's primary duty was to secure a provider and maintain a home. As young people moved off to co-ed university campuses and into urban careers, the formal rules of 1950s courtship, the curfews, the chaperones, the mandatory class rings gradually gave way to informal, equal, and self-directed relationships. Looking back, the dating landscape of the 1950s can feel like an entirely different world, a time of strict performance, where every phone call, dress choice, and evening curfew carried the weight of public judgment. None of this was really that long ago. Millions of women who lived through this exact courtship choreography are alive today, remembering the precise anxiety of waiting by a silent landline phone or watching a porch light flicker on. Modern dating certainly comes with its own unique challenges, but it is no longer an entrance exam judged by an entire neighborhood's rulebook. Did your mother, grandmother, or perhaps you yourself grow up with these exact dating rules? Was there a curfew sign, a class ring tradition, or an unwritten expectation that felt impossible to follow? Tell us your story in the comments below. We read every single one. And if you enjoyed this look into forgotten everyday history, make sure to like and subscribe to Untold for new videos every week.